start today. Today's a brand new day. It's a brand new season.
You're listening to Arkansas Preps Weekly on Natural State Sports, your top source for the biggest news in high school sports across Arkansas.
And here we go. Here we go.
What's up, everybody? Thanks for joining us on episode 3 of Arkansas Preps Weekly. My name's Kyle Sutherland, alongside the softball guru, Jared Hawthorn. Jared, we got a big week ahead, a lot to unpack. I know on Tuesday that we're expecting a lot of rain, and then also this weekend. So hopefully, if we're not going to be able to get the Tuesday games in, then we'll be able to get some on Friday and maybe some squeezed in there on Wednesday and Thursday. But like I said, we got a lot to unpack this week. It's now mid-April. It's, 2-3 weeks away before we get to the postseason. So it is do or die, or at least it's getting to that point.
It's out from district tournament for most of the schools, 3 weeks for some. We're right in the thick of it. The last week of conference play for quite a few teams. So there's a lot of decisions this week on ball games that'll make a big difference in seeding for district tournaments and conference tournaments. So it's going to be a lot of fun. I hope that Mother Nature doesn't destroy us for this week, because we've got 4 scheduled ourselves this week. And I know a lot of teams have, like 3, 4, some. I know one team even has 5 games scheduled this week. So everybody trying to get made up from other earlier rainouts and get everything in and get standings set for conference tournaments.
And if you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button and also share this stuff for us. And many of you guys have done such a great job of that, and we appreciate it so much, trying to get the news show out. Of course, we've done this for 3 years now as far as coverage on softball and baseball and but it's just it helps a ton when you guys help us get it out there, because we did have a really good week there and the first week with Natural State Sports. So we could not have done it with y'all, and we sure appreciate it. It does not go unnoticed. But we'll go ahead and get right into it, starting with Class 6A. Had a lot of really good games, particularly over the weekend in Central Arkansas, Jared. You had Bentonville West and Springdale Harbor that came down and played, I guess it was a little bit of a round robin. I can't speak tonight. A little bit of a round robin tournament. And Del Harbor had a really good matchup against it was a good first inning before Bryant really, I'm getting Bryant and Benton mixed up now, before Bryant really turned it on and won 10-2. And then Harbor did get the revenge Cabot. So they failed to beat the 6A defending state champions, but they did beat the runner-up, so salvaged the weekend a little bit. But that's the 6A part that happened in Central Arkansas over the weekend. We'll get into the Benton tournament here in a second. But some of the top teams in the West and Central Conference playing each other. And I think one thing that we definitely learned is, if we haven't learned it already, Bryant definitely is the top team in the state, or at least certainly in Class 6A.
I'm going to say that I believe that Bryant's the top team in the state right now. They're just playing a really outstanding softball. They're punishing people. And, it's not just, for the most part, it's not just 1 or 2 run victories. It's 6 or 8 or 10 run victories. And they're just hitting the ball well. They're pitching well, playing really strong defense. I'm trying to remember. I looked at several of those box scores, but only like maybe 3 or 4 errors in several games. I mean, it's been very few and far between. They're kind of running, on all cylinders right now. So I think they're really doing well. I've been real impressed in 6A with Rogers and with Harbor and Bentonville, all kind of the ones we talked about the last 2 to 3 weeks. They're still, staying right there in those top 4 to 5 spots.
Yeah, that's right. We talked about last week, because, of course, we recorded on Monday after the eclipse and everything. Bentonville and Gravett were 1-1 through around 4 innings when we were recording. Well, Bentonville ended up winning that game. Ryan Sanders went a complete game, allowed 5 hits, and then struck out 10. I think that's one, Ryan Sanders, the Louisville signee, that seems to get lost in the mix sometimes when we start talking about some of the top pitchers in the state. Now, obviously, her sophomore year with what she did in the state finals was just exceptional. And I think it was 14 that she struck out in that game. Last year, she didn't have a bad season, but maybe took a little bit of a step back. But when she is at her best, and we were talking about this earlier in the week, she is certainly one of the best at her position. And Bentonville, I think it's now 8 in a row or something like that. But either way, they've been on a run. So really, like you said, we talked a lot about it last week. Bryant, Rogers, and Bentonville right there behind them. That's certainly the top 3. But I said it again. Bryant and Harbor, they were 2-2 through 1 inning Friday. Yeah, last week on Friday. So that was really close. It was looking like it was going to be. And then, like I said, Bryant just ran away with it and won 10-2. So I think that Harbor is still right there as one of those contenders, as you saw in the way that they played against Cabot, but it's definitely those top 3 for me. And Bryant certainly at the top, and they got a really big one on Monday tonight. Tonight, if you're probably listening to this by Monday, it's going to shake the state. I think as far as just all eyes being on it and it being against Sheridan. 5A number 1 versus 6A number 1. Shoot, we'll go ahead and just jump right into that. I'm actually going to cover that for the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, so looking really forward to it. These might be the 2 best teams. With all respect to Rogers, with what they've done, and a few others, these might be the 2 overall best teams in the state.
I'm definitely in for Bryant being the overall best team in state. I think Benton's definitely right there in the mix. They're in the conversation.
Are you talking about Sheridan or?
Oh, Sheridan. Sorry.
Yeah. No, you're good. I made the mistake twice
already.
Already. Called him that.
Yeah. Sheridan. Yeah, you got me tongue tied now. So definitely, I do believe that Sheridan is without a doubt the top hitting team right there. I mean, Bryant and Sheridan are. They're so tight, but I think that the hitting edge goes to Sheridan, and I'm not sure. Man, it's such a toss-up on the pitching. They both have great pitching staffs. It may come down to which defense can make a great play. You know, somebody that makes a diving catch, or somebody that makes an outstanding double play, or something like that. These teams are so good in so many places. It may be whoever makes a great play that's the decision maker for that ball game.
Yeah, and you can check that recap on Tuesday in the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette. I'll have the results of that. And then we'll also post at least the winning coach, some video of that on Natural State Sports. We posted a lot of videos from the Benton tournament. I think it was 4 that we talked to, and we're able to get a lot of good stuff just about the season overall. And we'll go ahead and get into the Benton tournament. And, Jared, I've talked about many times with you. I've said on here, I've said just publicly, how much I love pitchers duels. And if you like them, this was the tournament for you. There was not over 4 runs scored in a single game. There was 4 runs twice, both scored by Benton, who went 3-0 on the weekend. But just another really good slate. You had, of course, host Benton. Greenwood came into town, Valley View, and then you added Little Rock Christian late, and then also Harding Academy. And you look at Ace Ellis, Harding Academy, Riley Smith, that we talked about a little bit throughout the year, that she's kind of one of those forgotten ones. On that exact same field 2 years ago, she led Valley View to a 4A state championship as a sophomore and had 2 really good games. They went 1-1 on the weekend, Valley View did. She struck out 18, including 12 against Harding Academy. But we talked a little bit about Ace Ellis at Harding Academy, the stellar sophomore. In that game against Valley View, so 6 innings pitched, just gave up 1 run, and she struck out 7. All of them were swinging. And on the season, she's got 114 strikeouts. All of those she got I'm sorry, not all of them, 88 of them. So dang near. Really good on that, and only walked 6. And finally, talking about some more great pitchers, Rexy Crane, the freshman that we've talked about from Benton a lot, her, Caroline Hicks, and then also London Burrow, who got the start on Saturday. A great collective effort from those Benton pitchers. And they get Azzy Morrow back, who is another good pitcher in her own right and has a great bat. So just outstanding defense played and pitching overall that we saw on the weekend. If you're a home run derby type of person, this was not your game. There was not a single home run in any of the games. They were all, like I said, low scoring. But we found out a lot about some of the state's top teams. And again, you can't say enough about the pitching.
Yeah, I'll touch on the pitching just a little bit. I have not ever got to watch Ace Ellis pitch live. I've seen a little bit of film on her, but I have heard so many great things about her pitching. Just that she, commands the zone. She has good movement. She has 3 or 4 just really dominant pitches. I've heard lots of great things about her. I haven't seen her live. I would love to watch her live. Riley Smith is absolutely one of the better pitchers in the state of Arkansas. She's continued to do it, year in, year out, and just get the job done for her team. And then I'll touch on Rexy Crane just a little bit. You're talking about a freshman that is throwing the ball really, really well. She is one of those that, from what I've seen, I think she's in the low 60s, and I've actually seen her throw live a couple of times. Low to maybe up to 62, 63, velocity wise, but really good change up, really good movement stuff. She has been exceptional to be a true freshman and to play in 5A and to do what she's done so far this year and really keep hitters off balance. So definitely a lot of great pitching. And there's others you mentioned there that I don't know as much about individually, but there's, out of that tournament, you probably had 6 to 7 really outstanding pitchers.
Well, and I wanted to give a shout out to sophomore Alyssa Lovell from Greenwood. So she's been their number 3 this year. We know about Tori Howard. We know about Haley McAdams. I was not really familiar with Alyssa. I had heard her name before, but had never heard much about her pitching. And she had a good game in that she got the start and went, it was at 5 innings, and then Haley McAdams went the last one. But 5 innings, gave up 5 hits, and walked 3, and then struck out 1. But the defense played well behind her, and I thought that she really kept things under control. And I'd asked Coach Hart about it, and I posted this on the website or the Facebook page and Twitter, just asking about, was there some sort of strategy starting her? I can't talk tonight. I'm putting strategy and tragedy together. Was there some sort of strategy of starting her? Because look, you've got 2 number 1s and nothing against her, but it's just you're playing the 3-time defending state champions. So his motive behind that, they didn't want to keep a super low scoring game. It was a low scoring. It was 4-2, but to paraphrase / quote him, he didn't want it to be a 1-0 game with Tori, and then they really wanted to use their bats. He knew that they were going to have to be able to essentially match hitting to have a chance against Benton. And Benton put up 4 runs in the first inning, and then Greenwood kind of started to chip away with it and just couldn't continue the rally. But I think that with what we saw with Alyssa, and she's just going to continue to get better, they're going to be in good shape. Greenwood will. And I like what Coach Hart has done there. And I guess this is year 2 under him now. And this is a very established program. Of course, Coach Saki did a really great job. But with Alyssa Lovell, the sophomore, and then also I want to give a shout out to the senior Gwen Hall from Little Rock Christian, a McNeese State signee. Little Rock Christian was one of those teams that they picked up late for this tournament. They came in, they battled. I know that's a program that's really trying to make a push here late. She had a double and then also pitched a really good game, like I said. So with those ones we just talked about, you really got to tip your hat to. But I think Alyssa Lovell, the sophomore that we'll be seeing a lot more in the next few years, plus the seasoned veteran and Gwen Hall, both of those also did a great job.
Well, I'm not super familiar with Lovell, but I've heard some good things about her. And definitely, if you can get 3 deep on any pitching staff, there's a lot of teams that would love to have that and don't. To get over to Gwen Hall, I've seen Gwen Hall a lot. I've watched her in travel ball over the years. She is just, if you're talking about complete player, pitching, hitting, everything, just athletic, great ball player, she's to me, one of the top 5 or 10 overall players in the entire state. She has the ability to throw great from in the circle. She can, kill the ball. She's a great contact hitter. She has the power to hit it over. She's exceptional on defense. Great lateral movement side to side. You can put her anywhere, middle infield, outfield. You can pitch her. I don't think I've ever seen her catch, but she could probably catch really well too. She's an outstanding player, and she doesn't get near the credit that she deserves. So definitely, I'm glad you mentioned her because she can play the game.
Before we head down to 4A, I do got to talk about BB real quick. We mentioned them last week in the game against Valley View, that pitcher's duel, just another pitcher duel while we're on that subject. They had one against Greene County Tech and came out on top 2-1. Lexi Delaney, 6.1 innings. She gave up 2 hits and then allowed a run and struck out 5. And then Jordy Lefford came in, got the final 2 outs, and she struck out 2 of those 3 batters faced. So I think, Jared, if this BB team, we know that historically they can hit, and I think if they get that put together just for more consistently, this is going to be one to really watch, especially as we get closer to the postseason. And you think about them, particularly last year, they were really hot for the most part throughout the regular season and won the Central, I think, by a couple of games. And then they got that 10 o'clock slot, and they were the number 1 seed, got upset by Whitehall. I think that maybe some of the things that they've had to work on this year, mainly being the hitting, I really feel confident in their pitching. But if they really put it together and they hit consistently, they're going to be dangerous with Lexi Delaney and Jordy Lefford leading the way there in the circle.
Well, Lexi Delaney and Jordy Lefford are both extremely talented. We talked about them a little bit last week. We won't beat that to death, but I'll tell you for sure they're 2 of the better combos in the state, and very talented. I think the key for BB going down the stretch is going to be if they keep their bats, fired up. They've gotten a little better here lately. If they can keep clicking with the bats, everything else seems to be working well. The pitching and the defense seems to be better. And so, if they can just get those bats on fire, for sure, that's going to be the key for BB. And before we jump out of 5A, we talked about it last week and then they got rained out. So we need to revisit real quick. Arkansas High, Lake Hamilton, and Benton all play each other this week. So that's going to be a big determining factor for seeding in that conference. Lake Hamilton right now, I think, has the advantage over Arkansas High, but it's a 1-game difference. Benton, I think, is only either a half or 1 game ahead of those 2. So it's going to be interesting to see how that shakes out for that 2, 3, 4 in that conference in 5A. There'll be some good competition, some good matchups this week.
Yeah, great matchups across all classifications, but we've mentioned many times about how deep that 5A South is, and it is certainly a big week in that conference to kind of figure out how things are going to shake out. Still plenty to figure out, but we'll figure out some of it this week. But we haven't had to figure out what has been the most dominant conference in Class 4A. We didn't talk about Region 1 last week. We talked about a lot of new stuff, and we'll talk about at least one new team in 4A. But I think you look at it, Jared, last week, it just shows again, and I know that they're playing each other, and some of it they're playing Class 6A, but that just makes it, to me, really even to where it's proven our point, because we've talked about before the season that we felt like Region 1 was going to be the strongest with Pea Ridge, Farmington, and also Gravett, the defending champion. Then you add Gentry to that mix. So Pea Ridge last week, we'll start with them, went 3-0 in the Brewstein Invitational. Emory, but you already know where I'm going with this. I see this. I see your face. Emory Bolin, just unbelievable. We talked about the incredible tournament and the Raymond Turner Memorial that Allison Edwards had, and Emory Bolin playing against Rogers and playing against Harrison, pretty much all upper class competition. 21 innings pitched, gave up 3 hits, walked 2, 0 runs, and 51 strikeouts. I think it was in the Rogers game that she hit her first batter. Otherwise, she would have had a perfect game. One of those, either the Harrison or Rogers game. But what more can you say? You made that bold prediction before the season. She has proved you right all along about her being the best pitcher in the state.
Well, y'all are going to get tired of hearing me talk about Emory Bolin. I'm just going to tell you. But the kid is amazing. That is a great young lady. She is exceptional as a person. She is exceptional as a player. In every facet of life, you won't find a better young lady than Emory Bolin. And that's saying a lot because there's a lot of great young ladies in this state. But she is a special, special talent. I don't know that there's anybody in the country that has put up a better 3-game stretch this year than she did in that 3 games. I mean, you think about 51 strikeouts in 3 games. That just does not happen very often anywhere against any level of competition. That is having and 2 of those were within a couple of hours of each other. Like the same day she pitched 2 games in a row, struck out like 21 and then 15.
Yeah, number
Like,
two
no real
out of 6A,
downtime.
Rogers was the second game on Friday after Harrison.
Yeah. Yeah, no real downtime at all. She struck out 21. I think maybe an hour, hour and a half in between games, something like that. I may be wrong, but it wasn't very long. Turns around and strikes out 15 against the number 2 ranked team in 6A and maybe one of the top 3 to 4 teams in the entire state for the year. Just against exceptional competition. Like I said, y'all will get tired of hearing me talk about that young lady, but she deserves every ounce of recognition she gets. She's definitely throwing the ball better than anybody in the state right now. Not saying she's the best pitcher in the state. She definitely has the argument for that, but she is throwing the ball better than anybody in the state right now. And I'm going to be honest with you, I would love to see some national numbers because I'm not sure that she's not throwing the ball better than anybody in the country right now. So it would be interesting to see who some of the other top pitchers around the country are. I know a handful that I see here and there, but she's right up there in the mix with all of those. So exceptional. P. Ridge keeps getting it done. Strong efforts from her, but she's also had good defense and good hitting. So she's gotten the support that she needed to go win ball games. I can't say enough about how exceptional that performance is over a 3-game stretch.
Then you've got Gentry that got the 7-2 win over Farmington. And you just look at that game overall, and Presley Ward, Audrey Littlejohn, Cindy Barger, they all had multiple hits. I mean, this team is hitting really well. It just seems like that if you get in a home run derby with them, the Gravett game is really what I'm referencing. Now, I know that it was Farmington that they just scored 2 runs, but I'm just saying if you get into essentially a home run derby, a high-scoring game, they're really you feel pretty good about them winning every single time. Now, they do have P. Ridge on Tuesday, which is going to be a 1-2 matchup, one of our 3 1-2 matchups of the week, I believe. Well, I guess it's 2 as far as the classifications go, and then you've got number 1 against number 1 when you have Bryant and Sheridan. But all eyes are going to be on this one because you've got Farmington that's still a contender. Just because they lost that game, I don't think any different than I did before. But you also got to remember Gravett, the defending champions. They lost 4 or 5 games. You got to remember that was to GCT, to Farmington, to P. Ridge. There was a lot of really good teams in there. But Gravett has also since won 4 of their past 5, with that lone loss being to Bentonville last Monday that we talked about at the top of the show. So we knew that it was going to be a 3-way, pretty much like not a 3-way tie, but a 3-way contendership to go for Class 4A, not just Region 1, but the state title. Then you add Gentry to that mix. It's just getting wilder and wilder, and I'm interested to see the P. Ridge game just because obviously the way, like you said, Emory is throwing, but the way this Gentry team is hitting, that's going to tell us a lot.
Yeah, definitely. Gentry's hitting has been exceptional. Their bats have been on fire. That's a big part of their success. They're a good, solid team in every area, but their bats have been really good. You've got great hitters versus an exceptional pitcher. That's going to be a fun matchup. The other day against Farmington, their bats came out like they just jumped on it, hitting the ball. They were seeing the ball well and just smoking the ball. So that was definitely, when you can jump on somebody quick and get them down, sometimes you can kind of put a game away in the first, 3-4 innings. And that seemed to be what Gentry did. They jumped on the ball, started hitting right off the bat. Gravett, I was starting to wonder a little bit about where they were because they looked a little shaky back 5, 6, 7 games ago. But man, since then they've really turned it on and looked like the Gravett, of old. And so down the stretch, there's going to be 4 really good teams just going at each other to see how that shakes out.
And we talked about Heber Springs last week. That was one that kind of came out of nowhere, and I know they lost a couple last week, but still like them a lot. But I want to also talk about a new team that we were actually going to touch on last week, but to be honest, it kind of worked out that we didn't because Pottsville got a big, speaking of home run derbies, well, I don't know if there was really a lot of home runs, but just high-scoring games. 11-10 over Bauxite. 23 combined hits, 6 errors, 3 each for each team. So it was definitely one of those. But Pottsville's, I think they're 11-5 coming into this week. And post-COVID, they were a really good team, and they haven't been bad since then. I'm not saying that, but I think it was 2018, 2019, they won a state championship, but they've really made a lot of noise this year. And all the teams that we've talked about from Region 1, I know we've talked about Bauxite, obviously Monticello, Nashville, Malvern, some of those 4A7 teams, but I really like the Lady Apaches right now. Savannah Mackey's pitching really well, got over 100 strikeouts on the year. Then you look at that Bauxite game. Addie Wilmoth, Madison Keller, and Jessica Atkins all had multiple hits. Emma King, we've mentioned her since our freshman year, arguably the best hitter in the state. She's up there with the best of them. She went 4 for 4. She was kind of one of the lone exceptions, or like as far as that just went, dang it, well, she went perfect at the plate. I almost said almost perfect. But 3 RBI, hit a home run. She's hit a million of them, it seems like, in her whole entire career. But I think Pottsville, we got them on the outside looking in this week. They could certainly be in that argument for that 6-7 spot. They continue to do what they do, then they'll be just fine, and the rest will take care of itself.
Yeah, I've been impressed with Pottsville. I've been kind of watching them, kind of that little side eye, seeing what they're doing. But they, Madison Keller's hitting the ball really well. Abby Wilmoth is hitting the ball really well. I think it's Kara Liverett has been hitting well for them. Trying to remember some of the names when I was looking at their stats, seeing some clips of their stuff on Game Changer, and then trying to look up and match names with it. Definitely, they've got 3 or 4 that have really just been doing their job at the plate, and their pitching has been solid enough to keep them in games, and their hitting has helped them win games. They've been doing a little bit of that, play enough defense and big time offense.
See, that's what I'm looking most. Or go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just saying. And then when you mentioned Emma King, she has been one of the best hitters in the state for her entire career, and she's just another great young lady, that can just kill the softball, and she's going to do big things when she gets to the college level.
That's kind of the question that I'm starting to ask now that we're in mid-April. Of all the teams that we have talked about, because the Super 7 hasn't changed a lot. Really, that 6-7 spot maybe, or maybe even that 7 spot has been the one that's changed really at all. It's just kind of been a little bit of rotation from 1 through 5. But who's going to play spoiler this year? Will it be a Pottsville? Will it be a Heber Springs? Will it be maybe Little Rock Christian? Interested to see them out of Region 5 because it's Bauxite right there at the top. Who's going to take that second spot? Is it going to be Heber Springs or them? So who will it be, the team that plays spoiler, or the teams? Because we really didn't see that much last year, I didn't feel like, in the state tournament. I know the state tournament's a good bit of ways away. You got to play your districts and regionals and all that. But with the way Pottsville's playing, the way that, and again, I know Heber Springs lost a couple last week, but they got a really big one with Little Rock Christian. Also, Brooklyn, those 4A3 teams that we talked about. Brooklyn, Madison Wooldridge went over 100 strikeouts last week. Talked a lot about her. And so will it be that or Jonesboro Westside? I feel like that this year, I don't know who it's going to be, but out of those teams that I just mentioned, we could have a spoiler because we just didn't have a lot of surprises last year.
I've definitely been really impressed lately with Brooklyn, and they have continued to look strong. I would not put it past them to be one of those teams that jumps in there and knocks somebody off that that you're not necessarily expecting them to. So that's definitely a good possibility with them. Pottsville has continued to impress me and got, to me, stronger all year. So wouldn't put it past them either.
Then down in Class 3A, I want to talk about the Mayflower Lady Eagles real quick. So when they started the season, they were a little banged up, didn't have their full team until I think it was the 1st of March or maybe even the second week. But really since then, they've been on a 13 consecutive win streak, just really been clicking at all cylinders. And they've had some close games. That's going to happen, of course, especially when you play up in competition like they do. But you look at Kylie Branscombe, you look at Tori Barksdale, so many of these names that have batted 400 plus for the last few years, really since you and I have covered statewide. I think that with Atkins, Hackett, some of the more consistent teams that you've seen with Atkins, Hackett, Mayflower, those have been the really good regular season teams from start to finish that we've seen over the past few seasons. And then there would be somewhat of a surprise. We saw that with Ashdown in 2022. I don't think that when the state tournament started, many projected them to win it. Last year, certainly didn't project Boonville to get there because they were at about a 500 record, and then they just really heated up, and Lexi Franklin did her thing. The whole entire team they did what they needed to do at the right time, and then, of course, Atkins got back. But this could be the year. I'm not projecting a state championship for Mayflower, but, Jared, we've talked about them for the past few years, just the potential that they do have because they were so young a few years ago, and now a lot of them are sophomores and juniors, so we'll have even more back next year. But I'm really high on this team. That's a big reason why they're number 3 in our rankings. They've been so high all year, and I really believe that they can make a strong push because it seems like they're playing their best softball at the right time.
Well, I've been impressed lately with Mayflower. I was a little sketchy on them early in the year for sure. And of course, I did know they were a little banged up and missing some players, but for the last, for sure, 10 to 12 games, they've won 13 straight, but the last 10 to 12, they've looked stronger and stronger. Um, there's a lot of talent there in the circle at the plate. There's a lot of talent there. They looked really strong for a huge part of the year last year, and now they're looking like that again. Atkins has been strong for a long time. I like them. I definitely would not count Boonville out of the conversation for having a chance to win state again. And they've got a better record now than they did at this point last year. But I can tell you, watching what I've watched with Boonville, there's times, even though the team's not playing as good as they can, Lexi Franklin just puts that team on her back and says, "We're going to go get this." She is just a competitor. She's one of them kids that's just wiry. She wants. I don't know that I'd want to fight her in a street fight because she's one of those kids that's a scrapper.
I wouldn't want to fight anybody from Boonville in a street fight.
So I mean, you can tell she's a scrapper. She's going to do kick, scratch, claw, whatever it takes. She wants to win. She's a competitor. And even, she's got a great team around her, a great team, lots of hitters, lots of ability. But even when the rest of the team is not having their best day, it seems like she finds a way to go, "Hey, I got y'all today. I'm going to get it." And so I've been extremely impressed with Lexi Franklin for the last 2 or 3 years.
We talked about the back half of the Super 7 in a couple of different classes, and one of those was 3A. Looking at Lamar, Baptist Prep, DeWitt, and Harding Academy. I want to go back to Harding Academy real quick because this was the first time that I had a chance to look at them this year. I've seen some clips, of course, of Ace Ellis and a few here and there, but I talked to Coach Garner before the tournament, and they've struggled to find some games this year because it's either gotten rained out or just schedules have been conflicted. But I really was impressed with Harding Academy. And look, they've taken care of business. Like while their schedule before Valley View, other than Farmington, it really hasn't been that strong. Again, not necessarily their fault. They've tried to find more games, but just hasn't worked out. But the way that they played against Valley View, they played it a few runs. I think it was actually in the 6th or 7th inning. They had a girl on third. So they had a chance to tie the game and just weren't able to do it. But I really do believe last year Harding Academy was kind of one of those teams that we had on the outside looking in a few different times, but they really can make a push, and that's why they're in the rankings this week. I think that they've got a chance to make some noise down the stretch.
Yeah, I like what I've seen from Harding Academy, especially lately. Early in the year, me and you talked about a couple of different times that maybe 3A wasn't quite as deep this year as what they had been because they'd always been 15, 20 teams deep, and this year we're like, maybe they're like 8 to 10 teams deep. Well, here lately, just in the last 44 5 game stretch, they're starting to look deep again. Some of those teams that were kind of not there have started coming on strong, and there's starting to be another 4 to 5 teams getting into that conversation that could be making a run into state tournament. Harding Academy for sure, DeWitt, definitely can't mark off Baptist Prep, even though their record doesn't reflect it. They've played one of the strongest schedules in the entire state, and they have a stretch here of playing more of their level competition for the next week or two, and it wouldn't surprise me a bit for them to get on a roll too. Um, and I do want to say Atkins. We say Atkins is number one, and we kind of blow by them sometimes and don't talk about them a lot individually. And we probably need to do a better job of that. And maybe you can elaborate on two or three of their top players. But I'm just going to tell you, Atkins is a very talented team. And just because they're number one, I don't want to just skip over them and go to the next teams. We need to give them their due a little bit too.
No doubt. I agree with you. I know we talked about Libby May a lot last week, and that's one thing. I'm glad you brought that up because we probably need to talk a little bit about, like you said, other than her, even though it all starts in the circle, but in Class 4A, you got to think about what the support that Emory Bowl, and kind of just going back there for a second, the support that she's gotten. I think a lot forget that she's got Callie Cooper back there, a 4-year starter at catcher she's going to play in college. I can't remember where it is, but Callie Cooper, if I'm not mistaken, was the starting catcher as a freshman for the Pea Ridge team that lost to Morrilton in the state finals in 2021. So she's been back there for a while. I know that one of the Conkler sisters is another one. I'm going to talk to Coach Reynolds this week, and I'm going to get with Coach Porter. So that's on my list already. But I know as far as Atkin goes, we know Libby May. We mentioned her 2 or 3 weeks ago and talked about the impact that she's had. She's going to go play at Henderson State, and she's led her team to 2 consecutive straight finals. So that's hard enough to do in itself. I know that in today's world, it's like if you don't win, then you just tend to forgotten. But that is hard, Jared, to get to back-to-back state finals. Hard enough to get to 1, but to get to 2. I know, McKinley Kaufman is a big one, a big bat that they have in there. Alyssa Limley's a name that's been a consistent first baseman. So I always talk about consistency, and there's something to be said about that. And Atkins has been as consistent as any team in the state as far as making it all the way over the past couple of seasons.
Yeah, I tend to sometimes overlook some of those great teams and don't talk about them individually. And I didn't want to do that. And I'm going to do a little more research on who's really performing for 2 or 3 of those top teams that we've kind of gotten in the habit of, hey, we mention them or we mention one player from them or, but definitely, and exactly like you said, we need to start talking about the 4 or 5 other great players behind Emory, the 3 or 4, 5 great players behind Libby May. And so I want to make sure that as we go forward and down the stretch that we get those names out there. I don't want to leave anybody out because there's a lot of great players on those teams. So we definitely, I want to publicly say that we're going to work to get some more of those names on those great teams out there.
Well, speaking of the top player on their respective team, we found out last week that Claire Womack at Riverside, she is human. We were not sure, but we found out that she was. She gave up her first earned run of the year. That was in their 11 and Riverside's 11-5 win over Rector. But Riverside also beat Valley View. That's probably the toughest team that they played all season. Again, we've talked about they've tried to play other games, didn't get a chance to play Magnet Cove if they would have won their first game in the Blazer Blast, but weather just did not allow that to happen. But that's some of the biggest news. Is just Riverside. We knew that they were certainly a top team. Again, there's a reason why we've had them at number 1. They're the defending state champions. They have, again, maybe not played what Magnet Cove has, what Mansfield has out of their control, but they've handled their business. They've done what they have to do, and they got another shutout against a really quality Valley View team that's 3 classes bigger than them.
Yeah, I was wondering about Riverside. Like, I knew they were a great team. I know about Claire Womack, but have they played anybody that can prove that they deserve that number 1 ranking? Well, they proved that this week with 1 against Valley View. And, looking at what they do going forward, they have 2 or 3 tough games on their schedule over the next 2 to 3 weeks. So before they get into tournament. So that'll tell us a little more about them. But they looked every bit the part of the number 1 team. Mansfield is looking really strong. Allison Edwards, we talked a lot about what a great athlete, and a great young lady she is. She had, a perfect game and 2 or 3 other good games since then. I expect her to just continue to get stronger down the stretch as she has every year. Um, and then Magnet Cove has, continued to be impressive. Quitman is another team, and I don't know a ton of the players on Quitman, but and maybe you can elaborate a little bit more on players. I don't know, but Quitman has looked stronger every game this year. I mean, they don't have really any bad losses in their losses. They have got two or three quality wins, and they've just absolutely hammered a few teams that were decent teams along the way too. So, Quitman to me is looking extremely dangerous. And then also with Woodlawn, you have the Lily Faye McWhorter factor. She can beat any team in the state at any time when she's on. And she has some good bats to go with her, uh, for sure. And she's got a good pitcher behind her in the Chastain girl. She's got a little bit of backup that's going to give her a little help in the circle when they need it. Woodlawn has struggled a little bit defensively, but outside of that, they can hit the ball a little bit, and if they can get their bats going, they have a chance to really be strong down the stretch. Of course, I had to rep the old CMS Eagles, since we got into the rankings for the first time in our history. I had to break out the hat and shirt for the Cutter Morningstar Eagles. Um, if we can stay healthy, we have a chance, I think, to really make a push. And behind us, there's three or four great teams. I don't know exactly how the rankings are going to shake out yet. That's not my department. I have my opinions, but it's not my department to put them together. But I'm going to say for sure, Lavaca is strong, Carlisle strong, Desart strong, Mount Vernon and Nola strong, Southside strong. There's just a lot of teams. I've even starting to see a little bit of good play out of Horatio. Uh, you know, when you look around, 2A starting to develop some of that deeper, like 3A was last year. 2A starting to look like they're deep, 12, 14, maybe 15 teams deep, and all the teams that have a chance. Bigelow is looking really strong right now. Um, Poen looked strong really early. Maybe been just a little off the last game or two, but I expect them to make a turnaround. So there's just a lot of good competition in 2A.
I will say for Quitman that Chloe Lyles, great pitcher. I know that she's having a really good year, and with them, I never even really flinch if they have a bad start because they always tend to heat up. Quitman does at the end, and like it doesn't matter if they're 500 or around it going into the postseason, they can just heat up and make it to the semifinals or just a deep run in general. That's what they do. But you mentioned Carlisle. I'm really interested this week. They've got North Little Rock. I know North Little Rock is not the North Little Rock of old, but it's still a 2A versus 6A. And then they play Riverside. We mentioned last week they pick up that game at Riverside on Tuesday. Now, that's weather permitting. We'll see what happens. But we'll find out a lot in that one because Carlisle won the first game against Desart 10-0. Now, I know Desart will take it for what it's worth. They were not fully healthy. And we talked about last week, Grace Knight. Now, we do need to make a correction. Grace Knight did return, but she's not playing catcher right now. She's a natural catcher, but she is playing shortstop. But we did report that accurately that she's back. She's just not behind the dish. She's playing in the middle infield. So having her back and then also having a pitcher like Kaylee McDonald. Jared, one thing I always preach is, I'm strength of schedule. But one thing I always say, and this as a pitcher's dad and as a coach, when you have a pitcher like Kaylee McDonald, you have a chance.
Without a doubt, I've been extremely impressed with Kaylee McDonald, and she's gotten stronger all year. I don't know her totals right now, but I think she's up around 175 to 180 strikeouts. That's crazy impressive. I don't even know her innings thrown right now, but she's definitely throwing the ball very well. Um, Carlisle, I think, has a chance to really prove themselves this week with a couple of tough games on their schedule. And if they can go get wins or play really well in those games, they have a chance to prove that, they deserve to be in that conversation in the rankings. They definitely have a great team. They have a great culture at their program. Their strength of schedule has not been exceptional, but they have a chance to really prove it with a couple of good strength of schedule games this week. I'm gonna go into just a little bit on Cutter, because every time we talk about Cutter, we talk about Jaylee, and Jaylee's had a great year. She's passed 150 strikeouts already, all that stuff. But we almost never get to talk about a few of our really good players besides Jaylee. So uh, I want to give a quick shout out to Haley Campbell, a sophomore that is playing really well in the outfield for us. Uh, she's hitting 500 for the season and has almost I think right at 600 on base percentage. Um, Kayla Mutter is hitting the ball really well, doing a great job at third base. Kayla Baum has been exceptional behind the plate. She's hitting really well, over 400. Jaden Barrett's hitting the ball really well, playing first base. And Kendall Fox has just been a staple in the outfield for us for several years now, and her hitting has really come around. So some of those kids that I have not always mentioned in the past when we talk about Cutter, they've had great year this year, and they deserve to get their name out there too. So.
Yep, no doubt about it. Down in Class 1A, last but not least, there's at that time of year that the 1A2 is just craziness right now. You've got everybody beating up on one another. It's certainly Concord at the top, and then a kind of a little bit of a, depending on what day it is, between Calico Rock, Shirley, and not Concord, Viola. Viola is the other one. So the big news this week is Taylor going to Bradley for what they hope will be the season sweep, the regular season sweep. Of course, last year they split the regular season, and then what was it? I think Taylor lost in district and then ended up beating him later on in the postseason. And basically they played 5 times. I don't know exactly how it went, but they played 5 times, and Taylor took it 3-2. So Taylor's trying to get a 2-0 advantage. It is very likely that these two will see each other. I would almost bet money on it once we get to the postseason. But Jared, I was going through the rankings. I know you and I had talked about it on Sunday morning, and I was just kind of analyzing 1A. And we've mentioned it 100 times, probably 1,000 times, that Taylor is the queens of 1A until somebody knocks them off. But just looking at it, with all respect to Concord, played a really tough schedule. They took Quitman to the wire and have played really good. But if Bradley doesn't hang with them this year, and I'm not talking about Tuesday night, I'm talking about on down the stretch. If Bradley's not the team that gives them a game, I just don't know who's going to do that, because really over the past few years, that's been the case. But Bradley was the one team that could get them last year.
I'm a little torn because I don't know Concord as well, but I'm kind of in agreement with you. Bradley looks like the team that has the pieces to be able to possibly play with Taylor. If they lost a lot when they lost a couple of their key players from last year, but Bradley has a great pitcher in Ainsley Moore. They've got 4 or 5 good bats, definitely got some good defense behind Ainsley. Taylor's continued to dominate and look good and beat bigger classification teams. But even the best sometimes have an off day. And you never know when they play, with them playing each other, probably at least 4 times this year. They're going to probably see each other in districts, probably going to see each other in regionals, probably going to see each other in state. So, they're going to play one more time in conference, but up to 3 more times in the postseason. I would definitely give the edge to Taylor, but I would not put it past Bradley to be able to get the win somewhere in that. It's just hard to beat a team 3, 4, 5 times in a season, no matter how good you are. Concord has definitely played really good ball this year, and so they may have a chance to knock off some people, and they may be able to prove us. So prove it to us that they are who they say they are, and see what goes on there. But, outside of those top 4, maybe 5 teams in 1A, it's hard to see anyone else having a chance to really get all the way to the championship game. I don't want to disrespect anybody, but just looking at the strength of the schedules and who's gone out and played that great competition and proved it against them, I think those top 4 to 5 teams are the ones that have that chance to get all the way to state championship.
Yeah, because Ainsley Moore, she's been playing really well lately. Seems like she's mostly back to 100%. She might be back to 100%. I'm not 100% sure about that. But she knows this lineup better than anybody in the state. because she's seen them. She's grown up with these girls. She's seen them so many times through the years. So that's pretty much the X factor for me. Not only just because of the pitcher and player that she is, but just because she knows this lineup so incredibly well.
Yeah, I've been super impressed with Ainsley's ability. And the first time I saw Ainsley 3 years ago, I was like, man, that kid, she has got all of the physical ability. Like, she has all this talent, but she was just not quite polished yet. She had, the ability to throw the ball really hard. She had all these tools she could hit, but she was just kind of almost like she hadn't quite caught up to all of her growth and all those things. She wasn't quite polished yet. And of course, any of you that know Ainsley, she towers over me, and I'm 6 foot tall. I think she's maybe 6'2" or 6'3".
I think she's 6'3" because she's taller than me too.
Yeah, she's 6'3", and I almost feel like that first year I saw her 3 years ago, she hadn't really, like, she had grown, but she hadn't really kind of got everything polished up to catch up to her growth. And then ever since then, she has done nothing but just looks better, more polished. All of those things seem to kind of come together. And now the last time that I saw her pitch this last summer, she just looked tremendous. And she had the movement, she had the velocity, she had the head game, the mental game. Like, she has really, there's no doubt in my mind why she had a chance to go play at Arkansas Tech, because she is a complete player. And really has put it together and been impressive. So I would never put it past Ainsley Moore to be able to get a win against anybody in the state when she's playing well.
If you like what you just heard and you're watching on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe and like button as well. And then if you're listening on the audio, you can subscribe on Apple, Spotify, iHeart, wherever you choose. We're on basically any platform. I think all the ones that pretty much anybody uses. So we certainly appreciate all the support. And I also want to let you guys know we've got a lot of sponsorship opportunities available. We're still looking for a title sponsor. We've got some talks with people, but as far as like title sponsor and all that, we have not signed anybody, and we've got a lot more than that. So you think about it, with what we're able to do right now with the rankings, with the podcast, the support that we have gotten has already been incredible. But, we just realistically, we can't do this without just a little bit of help. And so anything that you guys can do, we would love to talk to you about it. There's, like I said, there's anything from something that's a one-time to month, and even we could probably work out a weekly thing. Just whatever works for you, we would love to talk to you about it. So APW, like Arkansas Preps Weekly, at naturalstatesports.com is the best way to get a hold of us. And you can also reach out to me, K_Sutherland. That's SUTHERLAND AR on Twitter /X. So, Jared, unless you've got something else to say, we'll go ahead and close this baby out.
2 quick shout outs, and there should be a whole bunch more, but just 2 off the top of my head. Lexi Franklin passed 900 career strikeouts this last week. That's an insane number. Huge accomplishment. And Cadence Armstrong passed 300, and that's playing in the toughest conference. And she's only been a pitcher, for a short time with them. She's a great utility, great hitter, great pitcher, especially in a closer role. So that's very impressive for the short amount of time that she's been throwing the ball with them. So I know those 2. There's probably another 8 or 10 with milestones that I should be hitting, but we'll try to catch them next week.
No doubt. And we appreciate everybody that puts those on Facebook, Twitter, or sends them to us. We love to give those shout outs for those career milestones. It's definitely a lot of hard work that has paid off. So we appreciate all of you that send that to us. But that will do it for episode 3 of our Arkansas Preps Weekly, brought to you by Natural State Sports. For Jared Hawthorn, Kevin Bohannon, all of us here, my name's Kyle Sutherland. We will catch you next week.